Hi, guys. All right, so I'm trying to, always come up with some different ways to ensure that you are understanding what's going on with the novel, The Lightning Thief. And based on the grades from the quiz I gave, there was some very, in my opinion, questions that were obvious that you got wrong. And those would be about the book, and those would be, about the characters in the story, the three main characters. Some of the students in our team were getting those questions wrong. And so I'm thinking this is another way I'm going to try to help a little bit. So I'm going to record a little review of chapters 9 and 10, which you were supposed to have been read for Monday, which is tomorrow. And then I'm going to embed that into Edpuzzle and then put questions in based on this lecture. And then hopefully this will give everyone a review of the last two chapters and an opportunity to bump up your grade a little bit. So as you're listening and when the questions pop up, please be paying attention. And if you're not sure of the question, a great Edpuzzle strategy is to just simply hit the rewatch button. That brings you back a little bit and repeats the information, and then you can hear the answer to the question. Okay? So to start, chapter 9, okay, was I am offered a quest. So at that point, we had ended chapter 8 with that very exciting moment when Poseidon claims Percy as his son. It's at the end of that battle of capturing the flag, and Percy had to go through this big, sword fight with a bunch of kids from the Ares cabin. He's bleeding, he's weak. A hellhound had just attacked him. It's just very dramatic and very exhausting for him. And remember, he's brand new there, so everything feels like out of sorts and not in his element. And all of a sudden, he looks up, and the whole entire cabin is bowing down to him. And it's because he has a trident floating above his head, which is the symbol of Poseidon. And, Chiron ends that chapter and I think if you watch me read it, he ends that chapter with that super powerful, I always cry when I read it. And he says, Poseidon, said Chiron, earth shaker, stormbringer, father of horses, hail, Perseus Jackson, son of the sea god. And just such an amazing thing, because it was so climactic. It's a climactic part of the story. So we get into chapter 9, which, if you want to follow along while I talk, is on 127. I am offered a quest, and we're able to see how Percy's life, he starts to feel comfortable at Camp Half-Blood, like it's almost like a home. And then as soon as Poseidon claims him, he is put into Poseidon's cabin, which means exactly what we know, right? There's no other children in that cabin. So he has his own cabin. He has to sit by himself at the table, at his dinner table, right? And all of a sudden, people start acting like he's different because he is one of the big three's children. So it's almost like he's at a higher level than they are, and they treat him differently. So he had this brief moment of feeling like he was part of a family, part of the group, and now it's almost like he's feeling separate again. So in this chapter, Chiron and Dionysus, or Mr. D, the camp director, they call for him to come to the big house. And they do that because they want to have a quick conversation with him regarding what is the storms are about. We hear in this background how there's storms happening and the weather's weird, and they kind of want to address that with him. So Mr. D actually just wants to kill him. He thinks he should just die because if we kill Percy now, incinerate him basically, then all the problems will go away and everything that's about to happen won't happen. It's just easier in the long run to take him out. But Chiron convinces him to not do that. And so Mr. D goes off to have a meeting in Mount Olympus, and Chiron tries to discuss with Percy a little bit about what has to happen. So essentially, he says to him that he needs to go on a quest, but he has to agree to the quest before he actually knows what the quest is. So it's kind of like a, you're not sure what you're saying yes to moment. And so he can tell Grover is there. Grover wants him to say yes to this because, as we know, Grover needs to successfully help a camper. in order to get his searcher's license. Okay, and we haven't really been told what that means yet in this part of the book. We will coming up, and we'll discuss that later. But it's something Grover was working towards, and the way to get it is to be able to help a half-blood or a camper to follow through with the quest and return them home safely. So Chiron tells Percy that Zeus's master bolt has been stolen. So that's, I mean, obviously here we have the name of the story, the lightning thief, right? And so this is essentially, we know why, because Zeus, that's his symbol of power, okay, that the lightning bolt. There's three major gods, the big three, and we learn about their symbols of power as we read the story. We know that the lightning bolt is Zeus's symbol of power. The trident, which was floating above Percy's head, is Poseidon's symbol of power. And then Hades has the helm of darkness. And we'll talk about that later in the book. So the lightning bolt has been stolen, and Percy is supposed to go retrieve it. But before, he has to say yes to that. And then he gets to go up and he meets with the Oracle of Delphi. So now, because, I'm sorry, I should backtrack. Zeus thinks that Percy stole the lightning bolt, even though he didn't. And he thinks that because he's Poseidon's son, and he and Poseidon are brothers, and they get in fights all the time. And he thinks that this is something that Poseidon has done to try to gain power over Zeus. So, Percy can't believe it. He's like, are you kidding me? Why would I be able to do that? That type of thing. So now, I want to tell you. All right, it doesn't talk, I'm trying to think if it talks much about here, and it doesn't really, but the oracle, an oracle in general, is someone who can see your future, can talk to you about what's coming up for you. In Greek mythology, this is called the Oracle of Delphi. And it moves, Chiron speaks about this, it moves just like the Mount Olympus moves, and right now it is in North America. Okay, so the Oracle of Delphi is in North America. It happens to be at Camp Half-Blood in the attic of the big house. So Percy has to climb the stairs and go up there, and he sees this mummy sitting in this room full of old junk, all these old trophies and monster parts and all this crazy stuff. It's described to you. And a mummy is there. So the Oracle, for right now, is being housed inside this like shell of a mummy. Okay. And when Percy goes up there, the mummy kind of comes alive, and Percy asks, it's his question, which says, what is my fate? And the mummy doesn't actually talk, right? But Percy can hear everything that it's being said to him inside his brain. And they introduce themselves. They say, I am the spirit of Delphi, speaker of the prophecies of Phoebus Apollo, slayer of the mighty Python. Approach, seeker, and ask. And he says, what is my fate, essentially? What is my future? And the way that the oracle speaks is in rhyme. So all of a sudden, Percy can see this vision of Gabe and his poker buddies, and each of the poker buddies has a line of the quest. So the first part is, you shall go west and face the god who has turned. You shall find what was stolen and see it safely returned. You shall be betrayed by one who calls you a friend, and you shall fail to save what matters most in the end. And then it goes away, and Percy's kind of left stunned, and so it's over, and he goes back downstairs, and he talks to Chiron and Grover. And when he does not share the entire prophecy with them. He tells them that he has to go west to face a god who has turned, and basically he skips the part about he's just embarrassed. He's afraid. He doesn't understand the part that says. So he tells him the first two lines, and he says, I'm going to find what I'm supposed to do, and I'll return it safely. But he leaves out the part where someone that he calls a friend will betray him, and that he's going to fail to save what matters most in the end. Chiron has a feeling that Percy's leaving parts of this out, and he kind of warns him, and he says, you can't take the words for face value. It's also always often a double meaning, but Percy still doesn't share. So basically, it's decided that they have to go to the god who has turned, and they have to go to the west. And the underworld is in the west. It's in California. And so they have to travel to California and go see Hades. Okay, so the idea here is that Hades actually is the one that has stolen the master bolt. He has it. They have to go there and retrieve it, and then they have to bring it back to Zeus at Mount Olympus before the summer solstice. This gives them a deadline of, I can't remember if it's 10 days to accomplish this. Percy can take 2 people, and he chooses to take Grover, and Annabeth volunteers, and of course he says he'll take her as well. They have to travel by land because Percy is, an enemy of Zeus essentially at this point, and he runs the sky, so it's not safe for him to fly. So they have to go by over land. They can't use cell phones. They have to really lie low. Okay, and so the end of chapter 9 is exactly that: them making the plans to leave and kind of packing up and getting ready to go off on this quest. Okay.